Baltimore, Maryland is known as the birthplace of the national anthem and the resting place of Edgar Allan Poe. But today, the city of Baltimore wants to be known for something else, how they're using cloud technology to transform into a modern government city. The city's leadership needed a strong digital infrastructure to better serve its residents and employees. I'm your host, Greg Thomas from Workday, and to learn how the city of Baltimore overcame challenges and enabled digital transformation, I'm joined by two leaders from the city, Todd Carter, Chief Digital and Information Officer, and Quinton Herbert, Chief Human Capital Officer, both from the city of Baltimore. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here at Rising today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Greg.
So why don't we just start with a little bit about each of you and your roles, and Quinton, we'll start with you.
I am the Chief Human Capital Officer for the City of Baltimore. We have about 13,000 employees who service some 600,000 residents. Everything from employee benefits to classification and compensation to policy falls under the Department of Human Resources, and that's the office that I oversee.
Awesome. And Todd, how about you?
Hi, Greg. I am Todd Carter, the Chief Information Officer and Chief Digital Officer for Baltimore City. We're responsible for security, infrastructure, applications, and data across all of Baltimore City for both IT systems and operational systems. And I've been at the job since 2019, and I always say my first claim to fame is that my second day on the job was the first day of the Baltimore ransomware. So that distinguishes me from most people in this type of role.
Well, thank you again both for being here. So Quinton, why don't we start with you? You talked a little bit about the complexity, 13,000 employees, 23,000 retirees, a bunch of public unions. What challenges was the city facing that caused you to think about making this transformation in the first place?
Well, from my perspective, we also had a number of agencies. If you consider our quasi-agencies, almost 40 agencies. Each agency had a nuanced approach to how they performed certain HR functions. For example, an employee that was being hired and onboarded in the Department of Public Works, that process looked different in the Department of Transportation. And it caused some angst around how we hired people in the employee life cycle. And so we knew that we wanted to streamline our business processes. We knew that we wanted to have more consistency and continuity around how routine business practices were performed and executed. What helped us along the way actually was the crisis that Todd mentioned, was the ransomware attack, which was the impetus for us to move to a cloud-based system that would allow us to streamline those business processes and to bring more continuity to how we provide our support services across the enterprise.
Thank you. And so Todd, pick up on that. So once that decision was made to start to move towards the cloud, how did you work together to enable that transition?
So there are three executives that partnered on this, Quinton Herbert, the director for HR, our CFO, Henry Raymond, and myself. And we formed a bond that allowed us to install a sense of teamwork, install a sense of values. Here are the goals that we're trying to achieve. And we put together a great team that was able to withstand, think about it, we started in the summer of 2019, and we'll be finishing the end of year 2022. So that's a long time period with 3 phases of work in between. So it was that collaboration amongst us, that commitment to the end goal, which is to transform Baltimore's systems through technology, and our goal was to get to this point right now where we are now.
Yeah, and just to think about it, to kind of add to what Todd said, he spoke about the 3-year process. That's core HCM, attendance and time tracking, all of the financial modules, which went live last month, learning and development, performance and management, all of those different modules that we've gone live with in just a 3-year period.
Yeah, I mean, not only is that a pretty compressed time frame and a pretty big transformation, but oh, by the way, this was in the middle of the pandemic, right? So it's really pretty astonishing what you all have been able to accomplish.
During phase 1, speaking of the pandemic, we had to do most of our training, about 95% of it was virtual. And we in Baltimore City, we faced digital equity, digital education types of issues. So we have a lot of field forces who just learn better when they are in person. And so a number of challenges like that we had to overcome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think if there's one word that defines our city, it's resilient. And that resiliency is and determination is what caused us to not give up in the process.
Yeah.
We faced ransomware, and right after ransomware, a global pandemic. And we saw those as opportunities and reasons why we needed to continue on in the project.
Yeah, it probably strengthened the resolve, right? That we really need to make these changes because those are two horrible incidents that you spoke of in terms of the ransomware attack and the pandemic. But there's stuff that buffets the city day to day that now you're prepared for in a way that maybe you weren't before.
Absolutely.
As ransomware was the impetus for us accelerating the pace, we recognize we have not invested in technology as we should have over the years. And it just caused us to, let's move faster, let's move with resolve to implement these systems.
Yeah. So you've both sort of touched on this, but a lot of collaboration between not only HR and IT, but finance as well. What did you find were the keys to that relationship and making the collaboration work well? And Quinton, we'll start with you.
I think that the three executive sponsors have a natural synergy. We work together every day. Todd, Henry, and myself would, after hours, spend time working on this project. We developed a very close-knit relationship. We decided very early on that this was not going to be an IT project. This was not going to be an HR project or a finance project, but this was a city enterprise project. And it was going to require all of us to commit to breaking down silos within our respective agencies, for us to collaborate across our agencies and across the city. And we were determined to do that, committed to that process. And I think that what you see is the end result from top down of that commitment to each other. This was a team. In fact, the acronym for our project was Team Baltimore, right? How we transform technology, innovation, and how we bring all that together. We do it together as a team. And I think that is made the difference in how we've been able to transform digitally in this project in such a short period of time.
Because people always talk about we break down silos and we collaborate, but it sounds like you've really figured out a way to make that work between your three teams.
Yeah, we've been meeting twice a week for the last 3 years. And in those meetings, we talk policy, we talk standards, we talk transformation, and those discussions, sometimes we don't always agree. But we're committed to, one, show a unified front, make sure that we understand our differences outside of everyone else, but also work with other agency leads to whatever policy changes that we are implementing.
And to add on what Todd said, when he talks about how we may not always agree, very early on in this project, we set out our guiding principles. We wanted to streamline business processes. We wanted to use the out-of-the-box Workday capabilities with no customization. We wanted to automate when possible. And those guiding principles, more times than not, bring us together when there is disagreement on a pathway forward. We go back to those guiding principles and say, okay, let's look at what you want to do and what I want to do. Which way is closer to what we set out from the very beginning?
Where does it align to what we said we wanted to do?
Absolutely, and more times than not, those guiding principles that we set out very early in the project bring us all back together.
Yeah, I love that, because I do think if everybody knows where they're marching to and what the rules around the march are, what those guiding principles are, it makes it a lot easier to have those conversations when things get a little rocky and get a little rough. So Todd, early days probably in your post-deployment life, but what benefits are you seeing thus far, and what are you hoping to see, a year or 18 months out, say?
Great question. We're seeing a lot of benefits in several areas. One, the standardization of process. As we have about 41 different agencies. Now they all do grants the same way. They all do HR functions the same way. So those processes have been standard. And we also get transparency into data like we haven't had before. So our ability to to not only have a standard process, but be able to pull that data at the transaction level to analyze it, to resolve problems or complaints or issues. Quinton will probably talk about the story when he was, at a council meeting and he had a very detailed question. He pulled up his phone and he just, I'll get this information to you in 1 minute. So we're starting to see a lot of benefits of standardization. We're able to reduce the amount of software that we have. We're able to streamline certain processes throughout each of the business areas, and that just really just rolls to hard savings for Baltimore City.
What would you add to that?
And I would say that because we're coming up on 2 years post go live for HCM and time tracking and attendance, and what we're also seeing is a level of accountability that we have not seen before. For example, we've been able to pinpoint if there were issues with a person's pay, if it wasn't correct. We've been able to drill down and say, okay, this is the issue. This overtime wasn't approved by the supervisor. It's sitting in their inbox. And that supervisor now has a level of accountability that may not have been there before with the technology. Todd mentioned a specific instance. I was at a city council hearing and there was a very specific question around how many employees receive a health benefit. And to be able to go into my phone and run a query and provide a precise number, where before I would have had to send a text to my HRIS lead or my deputy.
Right.
They would have had to go and run a report. They would have had to, put it in a spreadsheet, call me or text me back with a number, and it would have been an approximate number because our old legacy system was not real time.
Right.
So it was, 48 days behind, 48 hours behind. So to be able to have real time data at your fingertips, you can't put a price tag on that.
Yeah, and the benefits also of that standardization across the agencies that you both talked to. Not only do you have the data, but everyone's now doing it the same way. Mm-hmm. So when you're looking at apples and apples, they're both apples and one's not hiding as an orange. Right?
Absolutely. And Todd mentioned the twice weekly meetings that we have. That cadence has already been pushed down in HR as well. So we have biweekly HR meetings where the HR leads from across the 41 agencies are on a Teams meeting. We're talking about the functionality. We're talking about the report capabilities. We're talking about strengthening that unification of business processes and practices so that we're all singing from the same sheet music.
We also have a governance structure where we have agency heads from across all of Baltimore City. We meet with them on a monthly basis. And so you have the agency heads, then you also have their number twos, their chief financial officers, their chief HR officers that are under them are part of that governance structure, and they meet bi-weekly with project team members as well. So we sort of spread the accountability out where it's just not Quinton, Todd, and Henry and the Workday project. It is Baltimore City and the Workday project, and that has worked well for us.
Well, I think that's great too, because what you're both describing, I think, is the idea that the change, the transformation and everything it brings with it is also helping to drive different behaviors and adherence to process and a different way of working, which oftentimes in a transformation effort is where things can founder, right? We got the tech, but if people don't change the way they're working and take advantage of what the technology can do, you're not going to get there.
Well, that organizational culture change was huge, and Todd alluded to the digital literacy issues that we face with some of our employees, and what is unique about where we are today is that many of the employees that we were worried wouldn't catch on or would be the most problematic are actually the ones that are really liking Workday right now, because they don't have to go to their timekeeper to see how many vacation days they have. They can go onto their mobile device and pull it up for themselves and see it. They don't have to go to some third party, a timekeeper or an HR person to put in a request for leave. They can do it on their phone, on their device. And so that level of convenience has encouraged some of those employees that we were most worried about to now they are our greatest proponents, our greatest cheerleaders for the technology.
Well, and you don't have to take them out of the community where they're doing their job, right? Mm-hmm. Like you say, they can just pull up their phone and do what they need to do without, stopping, picking up the trash or patrolling the streets or whatever it might be, which is pretty amazing.
and we can tell exactly how many employees are using their phone to enter their time, how many employees use remote kiosks to enter their time, how many use an actual PC device or tablet to put their phone. So when we get queries about that, we're able to say, no, our employees are enjoying it. Look at these numbers. Look at the percent of who's actually using it.
Yeah, of those employees who are in the field and the ones that we were most concerned about, over 90% of them use their mobile device to put in their time requests and things like that. And part of that is because of the change management piece that went behind our go live. We had job aids, videos. We actually deployed HR practitioners from across the city to the various yards to physically take the employee's cell phone and show them how easy it is to put in your time and to request vacation time and to see how much time you have on the book. It was a Herculean effort, but it proved to be invaluable.
Yeah, it sounds like it's just paying dividends.
Absolutely.
So looking back, if someone's watching this and they're in a similar role for another governmental organization, what best practices or lessons learned would you share as they look to embark upon their own sort of modernization journey? And Quinton, we'll start with you on this one.
I would say that you want to engage as many stakeholders on the front end as you can. We brought our labor unions in after the project had started. Hindsight is always 20/20. We probably would have brought them in a little earlier in the process so that they could have been a strategic partner going forward. To that end, we established a call line, hotline for our union stakeholders that the presidents of the unions only had access to so that they could bring their concerns, their issues, and we then communicated back to them how we were working out those issues, and that worked really well for us. I would also say that I think that resources and external resources, right? We kind of looked at how many people we thought we would need additional to our staff, and we needed some more, right? So be liberal in your estimates about how much human capital you will need, and then don't have over expectations. Workday is a tool. So it's not going to solve all of the institutional issues that you may have in your organization, right? But it is a tool that helps you to get there, and use it as a tool and see it that way. And I think that if you go into the project with that type of mentality, you will find that Workday is a great tool to help you to get where you want to be.
How about you, Todd?
In addition to what Quinton just said, a couple of things I would add. One, the governance structure that we put in place and set that up to follow what our goals, our guiding principles were. I think that structure allowed us to not only use the various committees to their best advantage, but it gave us a communication and accountability between the project and those organizations. The other thing I would add is we focused a lot on change management and training. And there was always more that we could have done, but I would say anyone who's looking to embark on a project, a transformation project like this, is to really get a strong communications, change management team in place, a team that can train, but also a team that can write and communicate and have a method by which that communication is constant. It's just not, one and done, or, if I tell it to you once, you're supposed to know it. You have to do it over and over and over again. So those are two things that jump out to me in addition to what Quinton said.
And I would just add to that too, is you have to have leaders who are committed not only to the project, but to one another. So if there is a finance issue, I'm on the call, Todd's on the call, along with the finance leads. If there's an HR issue, they're on the call with me, and we're working through and finding solutions, again, together in that team framework and that team mentality. We truly have broken down silos, and we solve problems together. And I think that is something that you really have to decide to do on the front end.
Yeah. Well, and if I think about some of the things y'all have said, the guiding principles, the thinking about what's right for the city as opposed to what's right for my team, the the communications and the change management. I mean, those, you can't do enough of that, right?
Yeah.
But it's obvious, even talking with the both of you, that it's real. You know, you guys are connected, and the project has benefited from everything you've done.
You know, it's not uncommon for any of us, Henry, Quinton, or I, to opine on an issue outside of our functional area. And there was one point in time when one of Quinton's directors said, "Hey, do I work for Todd?" and Quinton's response was, "You work for all of us." You know, and that's what people just need to hear. So if Quinton's not around, Henry's not around, or I'm not around, you know, we are speaking as one, and that has really helped us out.
Because you're all connected, trying to do the same thing. So last question as we sort of turn towards home here. So zooming out a bit, when you think about government as a sector, what trends out there do you think are going to have the biggest impact on governments and the way that folks like yourselves in governments around the country have to be thinking and operating over the next, few years? And Todd, maybe start with you.
One of the things I think that can really that governments need to push is getting the momentum and getting the momentum to change, getting the champions of change. And once those champions are in place, then create the space for them so that they can implement technology. They can implement a new path on how to benefit from technology. Most of the government members that I've talked to, they bring up the same problems. We don't have the funding. We don't have the people or the technical knowledge. I think it's more about the ability for teams to come together and say, as a team, business, IT, we need this to run our business, and this is the benefit of this investment. And I think the paradigm needs to shift a little in how do you build the case, not necessarily with the raw numbers of a business case, but also the commitment of leaders that really says to senior executives or the elected officials that we're going to be here to get you from point A to point B. That would be the change that I would see and recommend.
I'll add to that. Mine is a little bit more specific to human capital. Public sector recovered much more slowly from the recession than the private sector. We were just starting to recover when the pandemic hit. Now we saw the Great Resignation. And so our ability to recruit and retain top-level talent is going to be forefront for public sector. Public sector is struggling right now to fill positions, and that's not just in the city of Baltimore, that's across the country. I would say that we need to look at how we can effectively recruit and retain top-level talent. I'm excited about some of the functionality and features that we're seeing in Workday. We go live with recruitment in November, and I've seen some tools with Pecan and other tools that Workday has available that will enable us to be very strategic in how we go about recruiting and retaining top-level talent and staying ahead of the curve that the Great Resignation threw our way.
I want to thank our guests from the City of Baltimore, Todd Carter and Quinton Herbert. Thank you both for being here, and thank you for watching. And we're out. You guys were great.
Thank you.
You know what you're talking about. I think the City of Baltimore is in good hands.
Thank you.